welcome to Reading Aloud, the programme about books and authors, full of inspirational ideas for the children you teach. This week, we find out about what books parents are really buying for their children. And these people, the bookstore assistants who know a thing or two about reading tastes, give their hot tips for new fiction. Also in this week's show, we uncover Alexander McCall Smith, the children's writer. Quentin Blake inspires exploration in a school garden. There are books for babies. And our panel read Andrea Levy's story of raw racism in post-war Britain. But first, an author and illustrator I really admire, who happens to be a friend of mine, Quentin Blake. He illustrated one of my books, The Sad Book, and a really terrific job he made of it. But he didn't just illustrate the book, he realised it. He turned the text into a book, and as a result, he showed me back to myself. No author could ask for and get more than that. One reviewer put it, Rosen is the epitome of a Quentin Blake drawing, all jug ears and angular lines, with the bulbous nose drawn in darker pencil. Cheek. Quentin is probably best known for his partnership with author Roald Dahl, which has been described as a match made in heaven. Blake's illustrations have graced such classics as the BFG, the Twits and the Witches. But he's also created characters and stories of his own, like Mr. Magnolia or The Green Ship, a magical story about two children who discover something very special in their garden.
Then all at once, we pushed aside a screen of branches and saw something absolutely astonishing. It was a ship. At least, it wasn't a real ship, but you could see it was meant to be a ship. Then Alice said, "Come on, there's nobody about. Let's get a look at it."
The tale of a ship shaped from trees and undergrowth has absorbed the Year 2 children here at Dale's Infant School in Tamworth. And teacher Richard Borton has devised a whole range of activities based on reading the book. And people talk about books having an imaginative space. You feel that the children got into that space?
I think this book was brilliant at that, because it's all about the children actually developing an imagination. The children there are using their imagination in this book. They're going and visiting places that aren't real, but they're seeing them in the garden and they're taking it on.
Who do we think this person could be? Because it hasn't got a name in the story, but we think we've worked out who it is. Thomas. Quentin. Quentin. Why do we think it's Quentin?
And do you think they made comparisons between themselves and the children in the book?
Definitely. And what was quite nice as well, they actually saw the character in the book as Quentin Blake himself, because he always talks as I and we. And they were there, they said, "That's Quentin." And they were actually calling themselves Quentin at times.
Right, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your garden?
Because we couldn't actually do planting in the garden, we made some shoebox gardens where the children created their own design in the garden.
Who would like a swimming pool in their back garden?
My dad's building one.
Your dad's going to build one? Wow, that'd be fantastic.
And then we went on a senses walk.
What's that?
Well, what we did was we went round, we looked at things that they could see in the garden, things they could smell, things they could feel, things they could hear.
It smells a bit like a tomato plant.
Right, let's throw the dice to see what sense is going to land on this time. See. Use your eyes, have a look.
So let's get some idea of what these activities have got to do with Quentin Blake's book.
Well, Quentin Blake's book, that was the starting point. We read it as a whole class, and the children really enjoyed it. So from there, we took the book and we thought, right, what could we do with it? And we could do loads and loads of things that the children wanted to do.
So this book opened the door for children's story and non-fiction writing and fired their imagination for reading too.
I like The Green Ship because of the characters, the pictures and the story.
I thought The Green Ship was a good book because it was fun, and I thought it was a bit funny when it all grew over into a hedge.
The book world is awash with lists and charts detailing the current best-selling titles. But when it comes to children's fiction, I suspect there's a set of steady old regulars and favourites that aren't always reflected in the sales charts. We took a totally unscientific poll on the streets of Cheltenham.
I like Anthony Horowitz, or whatever his name is.
We've picked up several other...
Jolly Phonics books, actually.
The Jolly Phonics
books.
Jolly Phonics.
We're reading horrible histories, aren't we, at the moment? Yes.
Unfortunately, anything to do with football, so at the moment it's County Cup by Rob Childs.
Winnie the Witch we like. What do you like, Dom?
And Noddy.
Noddy.
Your favourite is Maisie, isn't it? Maisie Mouse.
Yeah.
What do you like? What have you just read? You've just read...
The Buffalo.
He likes the Very Hungry Caterpillar. Well, he likes the little holes he can stick his fingers in.
But what about people who sell books for a living? Do they have any hot tips for upcoming children's fiction? Let me begin with you, Kim. Any tips?
I particularly recommend this book, which is Frog in Winter. It's a story of a little frog that wakes up one morning and he decides everything's all wrong, and he discovers it's winter time. And he's only a bear frog, and he hasn't got many clothes, and he becomes quite ill, and his friends have to look after him. But it ends up well in the end because they knit him a jumper.
Oh, excellent. And this is by Max, and this is the name none of us can pronounce,
That's
isn't it?
right, yes.
Max, let's try Feldhuis. Shall we try that?
Feldhuis.
Do you like that?
Yes.
Is that your guess? And how about you, Sarah?
The book that I would recommend is The Amulet of Samarkand by Jonathan Stroud. I think this is a book for people who think that witches and wizards have had overkill in children's fiction, and this is definitely the book to change your mind. It's sophisticated, it's witty, it's sarcastic, it's everything that a children's book should be. It's conjuring magical beings and getting into lots of adventures and scrapes with a wonderful young boy called Nathaniel, which every child would look up to and want to be.
Well, thanks very much. There's still a lot of talk about crossover books. You know, those books that appeal to both adults and younger readers. So I've invented a category of my own, crossover rediscovery. And the author I've got in mind is Alexander McCall Smith and his tremendously successful #1 ladies detective agency stories. Now, the adults buying these books have helped rediscover Alexander McCall Smith, children's writer. It should be no surprise that Alexander McCall Smith can successfully span writing genres. He's a genuine polymath, not only a prolific writer, but also a renowned bioethicist, professor of medical law, and devout bassoon player. Curiously, his children's fiction was written long before his best-selling ladies detective agency stories.
Bye-bye, Fergus. I'm aware of the fact that some of my adult readers will buy my children's books for their children or their grandchildren or whatever, and may even dip into them, I don't know. I think adults can enjoy reading children's books. And then I think that I do find that I get quite young readers reading the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. I'm always very pleased when I discover that there are children of 10 or 12 who are wading their way through the Botswana books, and I think that's marvellous. When the large elephant saw Akimbo, his ears flapped out and his trunk went up. "No," shouted Akimbo's father. "Akimbo, stop." The poachers burst out of their hiding places and stared at the boy. Their leader rose up and lowered his gun, looking around him in astonishment, uncertain what to do. Then he saw the rangers behind Akimbo and let out a cry of alarm. There we are, and this is from Michael as well. They're cheerful books. They all have happy endings, and they involve animals, wild animals. So that really is, I hope, something that the children will find entertaining and, at the end of the day, perhaps give them a little bit of the conservation message.
Now let's travel back in time. We're in post-war Britain. The victory parades are over. It's a meagre period of more rationing and making do. Into this rather bleak landscape, the first wave of Jamaican immigrants arrive. That's the setting for Andrea Levy's award-winning book, Small Island. It's a story of prejudice, Britain's and American GI's racism towards so-called incoming darkies. A simple visit to the cinema triggers a virtual race riot.
You're coloured.
Segregation, madam. There is no segregation in this country. I will sit wherever I like in this picture house, and those men at the back should have been allowed to sit wherever they so please. This is England, not Alabama.
Just take us through the 4 characters in the book, Vicky.
OK, you've got Hortense, who is in Jamaica, who is very sort of middle class, well-educated, whose lifelong dream is to go and live in England, and her ticket into England is through Gilbert, who she marries because he's going to live there. Both of these characters come over to England and move in with Queenie, who's the landlady, who is very sort of working class, demonstrated by the clothes she wears, for example, who is then married to Bernard, who has been away at war, gone missing for a year before returning home.
And Queenie and Bernard are white?
Yes.
And Hortense and Gilbert are black?
Black, yes.
Yeah. I mean, when I read a book like this, I have to say, no, this is the history that I am part of.
Yeah, definitely. I can hear echoes of my parents and their generation in the book. I can see their perspective in the book. I have learned so much from looking at the 4 juxtaposed against the 4 protagonists, as it were, juxtaposed against one another, because you see with their eyes.
Did you feel, Grant, this was a story that you needed to be told?
I did. I mean, you know, as a white, middle-aged, middle-class bloke, I actually found seeing the world through the eyes of Gilbert and of Hortense was for me very powerful, and it really made me think about what black people coming in 1948 might have experienced, and that was like a bucket of very unwelcome cold water, really, into my pretty white world.
Do you think this is a book that's important for teachers to read, in a way, as history, you know, in a way, is it filling out a kind of historical background to some of the children that we might be looking at?
I think in a way, because what the book does very, very successfully, I think, is take the 4 fictitious characters and place them into the historical setting of fact. And it's, I have to say, after reading the book, it was things I was completely unaware of and actually felt quite ashamed of, to be honest. So I think in a way that will help me as a teacher now understand the background of some of the children and be more sympathetic towards it.
Does it save you in a way, Winsome, of having to tell the story yourself? You could say, well, read Small Island.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in it, but I think we also need to generalise it out a bit, because we've got a lot of people coming from different countries now, refugees or Somalia, all over the place people are coming from, and we also need to say, well, what's their story? Are we treating them as badly out of ignorance or out of design? I think we need to think about that too, because they could be experiencing the same sorts of things.
And that's nearly all from this edition of Reading Aloud. Final thought from Andrea Levy. She had quite a struggle to get the publishers interested in Small Island. Reflecting back on that time, she wrote, "Publishers had a herd mentality. They were worried that I'd be read only by black people, less than 1 million. And they don't read anyway. But my attitude was, I'm going to get these I'd love to have them pawing at my door." And they did, didn't they? Bye for now.